Councilmember Hayden.
Here.
Councilmember Hooker.
Here.
Councilmember Menke.
Here.
Councilmember Raisler.
Here.
Councilmember Weisenbeck.
Here.
Councilmember Weisapple.
Here.
Next, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, would somebody like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
So move. Second.
We have a motion and second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It is adopted. Next, we have public comments. If there's anybody from the public that would like to speak, here's your opportunity. Please identify yourself for the record. You'll be part of the report. Hearing no public comments, we didn't have any scheduled appearances. Next, we move on to the consent agenda. The following matters may be acted upon by the city council utilizing a single vote. Individual items which any member wishes to address in greater detail or as a separate item on the regular agenda may be removed from the consent agenda upon the request of any council member. We have the minutes from the regular city council meeting from January 10th, 2024. Does someone like to make a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's agreed to. Next, we move on to the business agenda, administration, mayor's report, just a few things to talk about. We did hold a meeting, myself, City Administrator Rasmussen, and Superintendent Gillis met with a couple members of the pool group, and we sort of went down and looked at the donations, what we've received, started talking about the space that we have to honor those folks that made donations. And we were able to come up with at least an idea of who goes on the sort of the major wall and who goes, and then on the other side, because as you walk in, there will be an opportunity. I think it was a very good conversation. I think we were pretty much all on the same page. They've offered that they have some ideas that they would like to bring forward. And so at the end of the day, the folks sitting around this table, you'll make the final decision on the design and how it's going to look. But they were going to put together some ideas based on that, so we would be able to get the ball rolling in designing, honoring all of the great community members, businesses, and everybody who helped make the swimming pool possible. The other part of the meeting too was discuss a little bit of finance. City Administrator Rasmussen made sure about how we're moving the money over that is presently in their accounts to our accounts to make sure things are being paid. The one advantage that we generally have is that, of course, most of the time when you have a project like this, the most we ever get for pay requests is usually 2 a month at the most, but generally once a month. And just to make sure that's the case, with the dollars that they do have in their account, the way that it is in some of the places that it's at, as they have it invested through Security Financial Bank and so on and so forth. Just want to make sure everything could go as smooth as possible. And had a good conversation, and the city administrator will continue to work with the treasurer of the swim club. Also, as people have heard recently, there's been a major shakeup in the health industry just a few miles from here with the closing of Sacred Heart, St. Joe's, so on and so forth. Obviously, some concerns that have come up. We do know that there's some situations with some professionals that come here, and then also we have, because of mental health beds and so on and so forth, I did talk to both Chief Ridgway and Administrator Rasmussen, and they do have they'll make some reports on a few of the things that we've learned. We did on some situations that may affect the citizens of this community, and of course, some of our activities when it comes to some of the things we need to do, especially with mental health. Just going to mention that it looks like DIG is having their business expo again. I think we got that out today. And I know tomorrow night they're having their, what's it called, a business seminar out at Club 10.
Small Business Empowerment Seminar
So-
with Mark Tallman from the state.
And I don't know on that if you needed to, if somebody just wanted to show up, could they show up?
I think so.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
at 5:30 tomorrow,
5:30
Club
to
10. If anybody's interested. And then also coming up on Wednesday, April 17th, they're having their annual business expo at the high school. And so on. I know these have been getting out. I'll pass that around if so on. But it looks like DIG is active, and it's good to see those things. One other thing I'd like to make a mention of, it's been a busy week, or busy couple of weeks for our first responders. I would like to commend the fire department, the ambulance, the police department, the sheriff's department. There's been a lot of things. Been some fires, been some injuries, been a number of things, and according to what I hear, obviously, it's a lot of professional conduct to deal with these and so on and so forth, but I'd like to commend the work of the fire, ambulance, and the local police departments for their efforts over the last few weeks. That's all I've got. Is there any questions? Okay, nothing came off the consent agenda. Administrator's report. Administrator Rasmussen?
I'll jump right into what the mayor was just mentioning about the Sacred Heart St. Joe issue. Obviously, we have, or I shouldn't say obviously, I should say, many of you know, maybe you don't know, that, so some of the impacts I talked to our ambulance co-director, Angie Bignell, today on. The concerns that we have are, there's a couple of them. One, our medical director, Dr. Young, who also serves 15 other agencies, basically in the Chippewa Valley area, is employed by Sacred Heart, so he's in a bit of limbo at the moment, not quite sure where he's going to wind up. So obviously, if we lose his services, we have to find somebody else. And from the standpoint of how easy that might be, we don't frankly know. And how soon he might leave, and frankly, we really can't function as an agency without having a medical director. So he's gonna continue to work with us the best he can, but frankly, if he gets an offer somewhere else that he can't refuse, he's gonna be gone. So we'll keep on that piece and try to figure out what these other agencies are going to do as well. Again, obviously, first and foremost, my concern and all of our concerns with the during the ambulance service, but if Mondovi and others can't find that they back us up in situations, that can have a negative impact as well. So that was a major issue. Secondarily, partly due to Dr. Young's services with our agency, almost every monthly training they have is sponsored through Sacred Heart as well. So Angie's concern was, okay, are they, what are we going to do with that? Is potentially we're going to contact Mayo and some other places, but are we going to get that same level of service? We just don't know. One of the minor pieces that was brought up is obviously if we have to go from here in an emergency situation to Mayo instead of Sacred Heart, it's probably a good 5 to 10 minutes longer, again, in a situation where every minute counts. Sacred Heart was the most convenient, next level of care to get to. So we'll keep monitoring those things, and again, certainly it's a concern, and just one of those things that was unexpected. None of us anticipated how deeply this might affect the area as well. And just back up a little farther too, the mayor caught me the other day and asked if I just touch base with admin and see what what issues they might be having. I did talk to Tally up there, and at this point it's a little bit of we're still trying to sort through things ourselves, but so they'll kind of keep us posted as well. And my understanding is I think Brian had an interview today with Doug Peterson, but I did not have a chance to listen to that yet. I don't know if it's appropriate now at this point. I mean, obviously our other concern, the real major concern regarding the closure of Sacred Heart is our psychological beds, or our for chaptered folks, and to that I guess I will just turn it over to Stan.
Chief, you want to talk?
Yeah, so we utilize Sacred Heart a lot for our mental health cases, and so it's going to be a big issue for us. We didn't send a lot to Mayo. Mayo is our other option. Mayo seems to kind of have some beds that are more reserved for their local agencies, is what it seems like anyway. So we're probably going to have to do more transports to Winnebago and Willow River over in Green Bay. It's going to cost us time and officer time to get those people over there. So it's going to be detrimental to us with the Sacred Heart closing. A lot of times we would take them direct to Sacred Heart for what's called medical clearance before you send them to their approved bed for mental health, and a lot of times they would get medically cleared at Sacred Heart and they would be able to go straight upstairs, and we wouldn't have to transfer them from there. So yeah, we're gonna have to keep an eye on things and see how Mayo responds to it. Hopefully, as you were aware, there's a lot of fighting going on as far as getting additional funding to Sacred Heart and St. Joe's for mental health beds, and that never was utilized. And so hopefully those funds could potentially be transferred to a Mayo, if Mayo would be willing to something in this region, because it's definitely going to be detrimental to all law enforcement in our area to lose that many beds. And I tried to find the exact number of beds that Sacred Heart had, and I apologize, I didn't know exactly. I don't know if Matt does.
31, I believe it was 31.
31.
They were the only one, so I can add it, I had a 2-hour-long meeting today with all of the regional human services directors and people from the state. And the biggest issue is Sacred Heart was the only one in Eau Claire with youth beds. So, and Gunderson and La Crosse generally will not take many patients outside of their Gunderson area, so which leads us to traveling across the state. That's kind of the biggest ramification. But they designed their unit at Sacred Heart, so they had swing beds, and was it 31, 32? And I think up to 15 of those were adolescent, and then they had I think 4 to 6 that they essentially could swing. So if they were heavier on adults, they would have more adults. If they were heavier on the youth, they would have more youth. But now it's Mayo obviously only takes adults. And the biggest issue, so the Eau Claire, like he mentioned, this county of Eau Claire actually had a contract with Mayo. So all the law enforcement in Eau Claire County could essentially go straight to Mayo, and that's where their folks did. I think there was 54 patients in this past year that Eau Claire ended up having to take to Sacred Heart because Mayo was full to begin with. So that just kind of lets you know the importance of Mayo's already full, and so we know we're having to use Sacred Heart and just the ramifications of that. So.
Does anybody know what the cause of the closings was? Was it financial? Was it staffing?
Financial.
Financial, okay.
And Matt, maybe you know that, because I asked the question now. There's a bunch of us a year and a half ago, a couple of years ago, made phone calls and called our legislators, called the governor's office and so on and so forth to get that more money. And I think the chief just mentioned that there was money that wasn't really utilized, that this money's in the budget. Is it the possibility of some of that money to be, the specific idea was to expand the beds, so people especially that don't have options, accept those. Was anything talked about that? Or?
It was discussed, but it was seems to be a non-issue with Mayo, that they don't seem to be interested. They never applied for, the first go-around, and, truth be told, in the medical world, it's kind of like, do you want to charge $1,200, $1,300 for a bed, for a psychiatric bed? Or do you want to charge $3,000, $4,000 for a medical bed? And that's the unfortunate part. And dealing with less headaches, honestly. So, this is, I think, and probably not a huge issue for here, but Prevea is almost equally, if not a bigger issue for a lot of counties because of some of the other services Prevea provides for all of the federally mandated birth to 3 programming for special needs infants and whatnot. Every county has to provide that. We here contract with CISA for that, but the vast majority of other counties were contracting with Prevea for that. And so now you have thousands of families that are no longer going to have that opportunity, so the wheels are really spinning there.
Yeah, well, thank you for the information. I think it's important that we all know what's going on with that, and so I appreciate getting that information in front of the council. So.
I just a couple minor things here too. Just a reminder, property taxes are due on next Wednesday. The first installment due the 31st. So folks out there, please get those in. The mayor talked about the economic development issues coming up, and yes, I will be attending tomorrow night's meeting at Club 10 with Mark Tolman, and hope to get some good information there.
Anything else?
No, like I said, continue with my report.
Yeah, as I had mentioned, that I'd like an update on preliminary budget numbers for 2023. Talk a little bit about each line item, where it came in, and go from there. So the floor is yours again.
Okay, so the goldenrod paper that I passed out tonight, and I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. There's, to be honest, everything's pretty standard, fell in line pretty well. I'll just highlight some of the kind of the red flag issues that we've talked about in the past. Highlight a couple other things that we'll probably talk about a little later on in the meeting. But so just starting basically at the top there, so I did both revenue side and expenditure side for general fund. Again, general fund is our major all-encompassing fund. Police, fire, the vast majority of public works that aren't utility related administration are all in general fund. Revenue side, everything is pretty, it's really pretty standard. The property taxes and other taxes are, obviously fall right in line. For those folks that don't ultimately, if they're delinquent on their property taxes, the county makes us whole for that, and then ultimately they have the hammer to take a home away, so we're always made whole on those. A little bit of variation there was actually from housing authority taxes, and then a little bit on personal property taxes. Intergovernmental is another area that is all pretty standard. Typically when the state says this is what you're going to get, this is what you're going to get. Sometimes they tweak that just a little bit, and that's what we saw there, so just basically just a couple thousand less there. Licenses and permits all fell right in line. Fines and forfeitures as well. The public charges for services were, so falling right in line. I guess I would say there that, what we saw some significant increases in pool revenue this year. Obviously, we had a good year, and so some of the reimbursements we got from both the swim club and the school for swimming lessons actually came in a little higher, even though the total numbers down. We saw some couple other areas that were down just a little bit. And then that miscellaneous and other, basically what's in there is, I had to go back and look, I forgot all about this, but, we did sell a piece of property up off Auth Street, for $15,000, so that came in, that's gotta go in that spot over and above. We saw an insurance settlement, actually, an insurance settlement for Matt's truck, I actually took out of here. But, so we had some dividend payments from the insurance company as well, so that was up just a little bit. So in all, we're up, we're on the good side, on the revenue side in the general fund. Going down below for the expenditure side then, mayor and council was, we were down a little bit, almost exclusively due to travel and training budget. We budget for all of you to go to the conferences. If you don't make the conferences, obviously we save some dollars there, and so I think that's fine. Again, I just don't want anyone not to have the opportunity to go. So that's where the savings were there. Say a little bit of savings on the administrative side. Public Works was almost exclusively due to snow in 2023. So basically, again, we still have to pay our staff regardless whether they're plowing snow or not, but we didn't have much in overtime. But secondarily, we didn't have as much in hauling fees and, like I said, some of the overtime. Police department, we talked about this. So police department was ultimately about $20,000 over budget. We knew that was going to be the case, primarily because we had 2 officers that were off during the year on basically some paternity leave. So essentially, they were getting paid their sick time, and they had enough sick time to cover. So we paid out over, it was almost 250 hours that we paid, and then we had a part-timer obviously filling in for those hours. So at the end of the day, it was about a $16,000 extra pay in extra salaries, but also we had some changes in health insurance for, again, we have basically changes in the health plan that resulted in about another $4,000 there, comprises that full extra $20,000. The fire department was basically right on budget. Non-departmental was down a little bit, primarily because we didn't spend about $12,000 in our loan program that we had in every year. We just didn't have anyone that was looking for either facade grants or any of our ADF loans, so that was a savings there. Capital, we did not spend all our capital, but I just put it for 43 because everything's carrying over, so it's as though we're gonna spend it. So at the end of the day in the general fund, we came out essentially about $18,000 to do that. At least that's what I'm, again, projecting at this point. One of the pieces that is even the bills we have here tonight that I kind of forgot about is we still have some 2023 stuff, legitimate charges that are trickling in, so you'll see there's some 2023 bills that are reflected there that I tried to get all in here, but we'll get up to date as we move a little farther along. I included library on here just because I want to point out one thing, and Don is aware of this because I was at the last meeting when we talked through this. So, point is the library revenues about 145,000, and their expenditures were about 157. It's not as bad as that looks because, frankly, the library was planning to use about $20,000 of their fund balance to plug some of their gaps. And by some of their gaps, basically, they took it upon themselves to join the Moore system a couple years ago. That was a $12,000 cost that, again, I think it's a great system, but it's, it was $12,000 more than they ever spent in the past.
Is that per year?
Per year, yes, yeah. So essentially, they were using some of their fund balance to plug their operating budget, which is their prerogative. We have no say over that, it's their money. Where they built up a pretty large fund balance was over the course of the year after we went through the previous library director and some of her issues. The new person that came on basically was not in need of some health insurance, or there was a couple of years worth of savings of close to over $20,000 a year. So their fund balance is sitting at close to $80,000. Now, again, it's their call to use some of that fund balance for operations, but frankly, that can't last forever. And so then, again, I was up talking at their last meeting, and one of the point blank questions was, well, the city's gonna have to plug that hole at some point through the tax levy. But frankly, we don't have the ability to do that. So they're gonna have to come up with a way to, figure out their budgets, and again, we can raise the levy a little bit every year, as we have, but, plugging a $20,000 hole at the library, frankly, is not gonna happen. And so I just wanted to point that out as part of this discussion. Moving down to the utilities, everything's looking good there. The, one thing I want to, point out with the utilities, and we talk about this at budget, but it, again, we don't talk about it a ton, and it gets lost on folks perhaps. So the revenues we bring in for water, stormwater, and sewer are obviously cash. People are paying cash for the use of what we bill them for water and sewer. Big components in all of these, being that these are run like businesses, is there's a large component of depreciation in the expenses. So even though, you can look at water, for example, and say, well, roughly it's, $600,000 and $570, well, we took in about $33,000 or $30,000 in cash. Considering we got almost in water, almost $80,000 in depreciation, actually we took in a fair amount more cash than that. And again, I'm not sitting here as an accountant saying that you shouldn't pay attention to depreciation. You should, but again, it's not a cash cost that's going out the door. It's a book entry, and so, cash-wise, we're sitting in a little better spot than it frankly appears here for all of these items. So again, all good things, but we're all trending in good directions there. The final one is ambulance. What I want to point out there, things looked really good there. We billed out $70,000 more than we had budgeted this year. And that's frankly as a testament to the calls that the ambulance staff are making, that they weren't making in past years. Now, the bottom side of that is we still have to do some work yet on, not all of that money we're probably going to get. Every year we have to make an adjustment for basically uncollectible debt. We do make an adjustment for Medicaid before we put it on the books, so that's reflected here. But again, we have cases out there where folks just are not going to be able to pay, and it's ultimately going to have to get written off. So we have an uncollectible expense on the books, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be a pretty good year, we think. And back to on the expense side of things, at that 382, I think you've heard me say this for a couple of years now. If we can keep it at that level and then bump some of these revenues up because we're making calls, I think we're going to be in really good shape with the ambulance service. One of the pieces I wanted to make here is, being that we had such a good year, recall that what's also included in these revenues is essentially that at this point about a $23,000 estimate that we used ARPA funding to supplant that $5 on-call rate. With the numbers we're showing here, frankly, I don't know that we're going to need those. Again, to make this fund balance, we're not going to probably need some of those funds. So I'm going to keep that in mind. By the end of this year, we have to determine what we're going to spend on the extra ARPA funding on. And right now, we only have about $15,000 left. But again, if we dump back $20,000, because frankly, we might not need it in the ambulance service, then we got a little more to spend. So again, that's just an option at this point that I wanted to point out as we walk through this. So again, things, it was a pretty good year. Frankly, we don't typically have a lot of variance, so there's not always not many surprises here. Obviously, our situation with 2 police officers on paternity leave is different. So again, just wanted to explain that's the issue there.
Any questions on this? What I asked him to give the overview, each line item for each budget, to where we were at, and hopefully I was able to explain some of the situations that happened within that. If there's any other questions, feel free to ask now, or if something comes up, you think about it, if you wanted some more detail on any of the particular budgets. As I said, there will still be a few more, but there was a few bills to pay. It's never, by now, it's just a few, you know, so.
There's nothing big outstanding out there that we're not aware of, but.
For the ambulance, are we building into that, some sort of account to purchase the next ambulance?
So, I mean, I think that's always been the goal here, Matt, is to make enough money that when it comes time to pay for another ambulance, that we have enough in there to hopefully pay for it in cash. And just as a reminder, so again, all of these, you know, so general fund is its own, library is all on its own, obviously water, stormwater, sewer, ambulance, so ambulance is its own fund.
Yep.
So whatever it carries over just stays in that fund, it doesn't go to general fund, it doesn't go elsewhere.
So kind of
that's exactly what we're after.
My kind of question is, by having a year
Yeah.
that our revenues are quite, I mean, that's a decent amount over our expenses, does that go directly towards that, or how does that work?
It just
Or is
stays,
it's
it
one pot of
stays
money?
in there, so in this case, it's a revenue fund or an enterprise fund, so it's retained earnings. It just stays there. It's not to say that the council can't decide to use it on something else. Frankly, you could transfer it somewhere else if you so desired, but I think the goal has always been to just leave it there to pay for ambulances. That's clearly what we've done in the past, and I wouldn't frankly recommend anything
Right.
else.
That's what I wanted to make sure was happening,
Yeah.
so that's why I was asking.
Yeah, because basically every ambulance that we have bought, we bought with cash. We built up
Right.
enough, and so we've been able to, that's been one of the things. And I do know, and that they were still, at one time, we always had the number one, what we call the first ambulance out, there was always the second. And at one time, they were talking about rotating those. I don't know if he's still doing that. So this would keep the mileage on all of them, wouldn't get that high. Because we used to do one every 3 years,
Right.
no matter what.
And
And they said, well, we don't really gotta do that anymore, you know. And I was like,
Yeah, it seems to be working.
yeah. Any other questions on the budget from 2023? Okay, anything else?
no, I'll chime in later with.
Other things, okay. Let's move on to public safety, police department, Chief Ridgway.
Yeah, I had asked Officer Mike Stalky to stop in so I can introduce you guys that haven't met him yet. But, so Mike is our new full-time officer. He comes to us from the Waniwak Police Department. He was the chief in Waniwak for 3 years, and then he has a total of 10 years of law enforcement experience. So we were excited about his experience coming in. He's currently living in the Maiden Rock area. He's being trained by Sergeant Shellhorn. So he'll be with John for the next few shifts and be on his own shortly because he knows what he's doing with 10 years' experience. We're just kind of showing him the community, showing him our paperwork process and things like that. Mike, you have anything to add?
Like 10 years law enforcement, I've done nuclear security here at Red Wing, at the power plant for almost 10 years, and then my wife working for the government, we've traveled, been in Washington DC and some details with presidents and Kansas City area with Federal Protective Service Police, so kind of a unique background, but it's nice to kind of come back home. We lived in Hager City for quite a while, so Maiden Rock now, so thank you all for the opportunity.
Anything else, Chief?
That's all I have regarding that.
Oh, okay,
Just
well,
a couple-
then I'll just say, welcome, first of all. Glad I hear good things from the chief and so far, and so again, we look forward to a good long tenure here.
Yeah. The other things that I have, just want to talk a little bit about some training things that we've been doing. Tonight we had department training. It was a good way for everybody to get together and meet Mike as well, but we did policy training, so that was a long 2.5 hours of policy training. And then in February, we have DAT training with the Elk Mountain Police Department, some other agencies up in Dunn County that we've been doing some training with. So we're gonna go up there in February for DAT training. And then I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about a success story with our SRO. One of the goals of the program was for Brandon to build relationships with our youth. And so we had a youth that had an issue at home. He sent Brandon an email directly asking to talk to Brandon. So that's kind of one of the success stories of our program up there, is the relationships that an SRO can build with kids so that they feel comfortable enough to send an email to talk to an adult, whether it's a police officer. I sent it to both Brandon and the principal, so he obviously trusts those two people in that building, and I just wanted to share that success story with you guys. It just makes me proud of our program and the support that you guys gave to that program, so thank you. That's all I have.
Touching on the Purina thing, Stan?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Scott. We haven't done any real broadcasting about it yet. We're gonna do some public releases with Purina, but we did meet with Purina the other day down here at council chambers. Purina donated $25,000 to our therapy dog program, along with dog food for the life of the pet. So, for Sam, I should call him the pet. For Sam. So we met with a bunch of Purina folks. They presented us with a giant check, and so we're gonna do some social media stuff with that, and it can coincide with when they want to release it and things like that. So we just greatly appreciate their support. $25,000 to our program is just absolutely amazing. Our funding support has been phenomenal in this community, and we thank everybody for that. And we were talking about it tonight and kind of how we're going to use Sam, and we were talking about, like, you know, what if another agency requests him? And I said, you know what? I said, our donors have been from all over our area. If somebody has some mental health needs that they need some help with, we're going to support them, because, you know, it's just unbelievable the support we've had from people around us, as long as we have the funds to do so, and we have the time in our schedule. If Brandon needs to go and help the sheriff's department on something, you know, we've had donors from Buffalo County. You know, Buffalo County calls us and they have a case nearby that we can quick run over there and help them with. We're going to try to make ourselves available, because it's just phenomenal, the support we've had. We've got probably over 10 years worth of funding built up in our program already, so very happy with that program and how it's going.
How's the training going? Are we getting close to graduation day yet?
Good. He finishes up his Puppy Einstein training. He starts another training on, I think it's like February 5th. Monday, February 5th, he starts another training program after he finishes his Puppy Einstein. So
it's like grade school, now this is middle or high school?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. After that, he'll have one more training, and then he goes into his therapy dog training after that. And the therapy dog training will be basically reiterating all of the training he's learned as a puppy and being able to pass a test at the end to become a certified therapy dog. So.
Any questions for the police department? Anything from the fire department?
Just a quick update that, so tomorrow night, Rural Fire has a quarterly meeting. They were slated to be up at the fire hall. Actually, there was something else, there's a training going on up there, so they're gonna meet here instead. Chief King just wanted me to mention that, so it gets out there. And obviously, they'll have something on the door up there, and if people, you know, if someone does go up there, but they've reposted their meeting, and so it should be good to go.
Is there any movement still with making a district, or?
I don't know if there's any movement making the district, but to getting something a little more clear on, you know, I guess it's kind of, I think with some changes in some of their leadership, I think it's more likely. And so I did say to Chief King that apparently one of the representatives is supposed to be contacting me, but they haven't, so now we're going the other way.
Because the biggest hurdle, right, was kind of the financial
I mean,
part.
the
that
biggest
we've
hurdle
already
has been jumped. I mean,
Yeah.
the financial piece, it's, you know, we already have in place. It's just a matter of putting a district in place where, again, we don't have kind of these two sets of, you know, the same employees that are working for the city and the rural. So it seems like every significant hurdle has been successfully jumped, so.
Okay, from ambulance, you already mentioned. a few
Yeah,
things.
just one more thing. So I did, in some of my discussions with the folks at Advent, they did want to mention just a public thank you to the work of several ambulance staff on a couple of the major calls that they've had up there recently, where basically some of our staff has stayed and helped some of their folks in the emergency room. And Advent obviously is very appreciative of that, and it's a fair amount of above and beyond, but it's just some of the level of service that some of our people have and experience that they have. So again, I think it's a good working relationship, and it's come a long way. So we thank both our ambulance staff and Advent for acknowledging their assistance.
If I could, I'd like to add too, on top of the ambulance, at the fire out at Hoopert's, it was a very cold day and a long day, and all of the ambulance staff did absolutely amazing job of continually walking around, passing out hand warmers, water, getting people to come back. They were using essentially 2 ambulances to get a lot of the firefighters out of the elements and to warm up and helping them clean their packs. And I mean, they were just kind of nonstop to a point of that me and a couple others had to like remind them of to take care of themselves too. So kudos to them that were there.
It's good to hear the good things. Okay, anything else on ambulance? No? Public Works Utilities, engineers report, Russ?
Yes, good evening, my engineer's report will be covered under item 3, update Madison Street project bids and the 6th Avenue East project.
Okay. Monthly update, Superintendent Gillis?
Yeah, a couple quick things. The guys are hard at work. Even though it's not snowing, we still field a ton of questions. What are you doing this time of year if it's not snowing? But they're out knocking on doors, doing cross-connection inspections like we discussed a couple meetings ago. They're doing the meter change-out program currently as well. Doing a lot of our pump maintenance and indoor things that have to be done, oil changes in gearboxes, things like that. So even though it's not snowing out, there's never a shortage of maintenance type items that need to be done during the winter months. So it's routine right now. We don't really have any major issues, just a few hiccups here or there on some of our equipment, which is to be expected. Other than that, unless you have any questions, I'll be speaking here in the next couple of days.
Okay, any questions on the monthly report? If not, we'll move on to updates. Notice it says updates and not actionable items. Anyway, so Madison Street project bids. You want to start, Russ?
Yes, last week, Thursday, January 18th at 10 a.m., we had a public bid opening for people who wanted to attend in person at Cedar Corp, and it's also a Microsoft Teams electronic bid opening for the Madison Street project. We received 5 bids for the project, and unfortunate news, the bids came in very high. The low bidder was McCabe Construction at $3.2 million. Haas Construction was second at $3.3 million, so those two were really close. And then there was a big spread for some reason. Third was Total Excavating out of River Falls at $4.6 million. Tri-City, a new bidder out of Bloomer at $4.9 million, and A1, who did your 3rd Street project, was at $5.8 million. So very unusual spread. We usually don't see that. Usually it's a few $100,000. So I'll talk about that a little bit down the road in terms of the reasons for the high bids, what we're thinking happened. But if you remember, we did a construction cost estimate with contingency for this project back in October 2021, and that was for the Wisconsin DOT Local Road Improvement Grant process and application. The grant was awarded in March of '22 for about $867,000. Our estimate back in October 2021 for construction contingency, design and construction engineering and soil borings was was 2.67 million. So if you subtract out the design and construction engineering and soil borings, our construction budget going back to 2021 was 2.3 million. So bids came in about 982,000 over that 2021 estimate. And we've been reviewing the bids, talking to the 2 low bidders. Some of the high bid costs that were mentioned to us from contractors, one of the big ones was inflation.
You know, we were seeing last year some projects where that had stabilized and wasn't too high. But the two low bidders told us that from 2021 till now at the bidding, they've had a 40% increase in materials and then labor and benefits. So that's where one of the big cost items was inverted into all the bids. Not all of it, but a good portion of it. The other item, during design, when we did soil borings, the soil borings indicated high groundwater with the south end of the project where we have the 21-inch sanitary sewer interceptor. So there was some additional costs that were included in the bids there for what we call dewatering, where they need to bring that water table down in order to install that sanitary sewer. But what made it complicated for contractors, with those soil borings, there was weathered sandstone in that area. So it makes it very difficult for the contractor to put well points in along the sanitary and bring that water table down. So contractors bid that real high that they were gonna be fighting that water table due to the rock. The rock didn't affect the sanitary sewer because we're putting the sanitary sewer in the same trench to avoid any rock issues. So it wasn't a rock issue. And then also with the sanitary sewer, we originally wanted to put the new sanitary sewer next to the existing, so the existing flows could stay in place and not have to do a bypass, but the elevation didn't work out during design. We would have had conflicts with laterals and so forth, so there was a large a large bypass cost that came in on the sanitary sewer. That wasn't included in the estimate back in '21. And what that entails, that every section of sanitary sewer, they need to set up a temporary pump system and pump, almost the entire village's wastewater that comes to that point down to the downstream existing system. And then they have to keep moving that as we move upstream as we install that sanitary sewer. So there were 3 different bypasses during construction, and then in the bid, there was a bypass for the entire system, so the new pipe could be televised as part of an inspection.
That cost alone was like $180,000.
Yeah, that was a really big item. And then, looking through the bids, we split out the bids to match your different funds and accounting systems and so forth, so we don't have to do that at the end of the project. So we have subtotals for, when you see the bid tabs in your February meeting, we have subtotals for sanitary, water main, storm sewer. We separated out the cold bin abandonments under the sidewalk, and then the street construction. The sanitary sewer, like I said, was a large item. The water main was surprisingly within $30,000 of our 2021 estimate. Storm sewer was higher. In and along the existing buildings, we have twice the depth of typical storm sewer we put in. Because once we got into design, all of the buildings have roof drains that come out of the foundation of the building, and they're at 8 feet deep. Typically we'll put storm sewer in at 4 feet deep. So that number was up. And then overall, through all the street construction. So pretty much all the unit prices were up, again, with inflation, increase in material and labor costs throughout all the bids. Again, going back to the spread of the bids and the high bids, it's our opinion that even though we got this project out very early, we're one of the first large projects out, contractors are telling us there's lots of work coming out, more than anyone can handle with all the grant money out there. And there's a lot of much easier projects to do than this project, because this has a lot of moving parts. It's a downtown area, so it's a difficult project for contractors to look at, especially when they have other work and they can go and do an easier project or something like that.
Fancy way of saying price gouging.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and, you know, the big spread, we call that a courtesy bid. You know, they weren't looking to win the project or anything, like I said, they know there's other things coming out this year, so they, you know, all these contractors bid all of our projects, and it was more of a courtesy, see how they'd come in, and, you know, they were high, and you were still gonna do the project, they'd make a lot of money off it, so kind of throw out those other three high bids over and above the two low bids. Some of our thoughts, in terms of some next steps or recommendations. Again, you have that, Wisconsin DOT local road improvement grant, just under $867,000. You have until July of 2027 to utilize that money. So if you're gonna put off the project a year or two, you know, again, you know, if your pool project going on and other commitments and the high bids, that might be something you wanna consider. So you have several years for that grant money before you lose it. When we get projects like this, it doesn't happen very often. We always look at, okay, where can we reduce the limits of the project to get the project back down to your 2021 cost estimates. An area that you could look at eliminating, obviously, would be the south end of the project from 5th Avenue West to 8th Avenue West. Just for that sanitary sewer, that dewatering, the bypassing and so forth, just for the sanitary sewer, that project is a little over $500,000. So, that could be a block or an area, you know, that could come out of the project and rebid it as a smaller project to get it back within your budget. We're gonna continue to look at additional grant funding, primarily for the sanitary sewer and water. And you have LRIP funding for the street, the storm sewer, the sidewalks and so forth, at $867,000. The issue we're finding with the sanitary sewer and water, we did apply a year or so ago, if you remember, through the Wisconsin DNR Safe Drinking Water and Clean Water Fund for the sanitary sewer water funding. We scored very low with like 50 other communities. And that program is primarily a low-interest loan program. And then based on your debt, based on condition of things, you're in that pot in terms of competition to get what they call principal forgiveness, which is the same thing as a grant. So we never pursued that because a low-interest loan doesn't do anything for us. There's also the USDA RD program. That kind of follows the same thing as the DNR program. Low interest loan first, and then depending on when you submit the application on whether you get a grant or not, you don't know until that happens. So, and then with those programs, what you have now with the LRIP program, that's a state grant. All these other programs are federal, so then you throw in federal wage rates, federal benefits, you know, so the cost goes up, and you're getting federal funding, but there's a lot of federal paperwork and federal wage rates that the contractors have to follow. So, too, with those, if you did get an amount, how would it balance out between higher bids because of federal wage rates being in the project? So those are just some of the next steps we can discuss, the reasons why for the high bids.
Okay,
Yeah,
question.
open up
Well, I got a million of them,
questions.
but I'll get to the first one. When we received the grant of the 800-some thousand, 860,000, something like that, it was based on that project,
Based on that cost estimate.
Yeah.
on that cost.
That cost.
We changed the project, does it affect that money?
That's a good question. The DOT, through that grant program, you have what they call a signed state municipal agreement. And I've talked to the DOT, we've talked to the DOT over the last several years. If projects came in high and over budget, are there options with that? So we can go back and ask for an amendment to that state municipal agreement, show them we have the bid numbers, we have some good numbers that we can show them in terms of those grant eligible items through the LRIP program. And it's very possible they would allow an amendment to reduce the project limits, again, that south half where the sanitary sewer is, and do everything else, and keep the same amount of grant money.
So it is possible.
Yes, it's possible. We just have to put a request in and.
The only bad part about that request is if you look at these numbers, the street construction was only $1,552,000. The
Yeah.
state's only gonna give you 50% of that, which is still $800-some thousand. So the majority of the cost overruns is in your water, and is in your sewer, and your storm. That's about 80% of your cost overrun right there. Asking for an amendment for the state doesn't help you with any of the water and sewer, because those programs don't cover water and sewer. So, we can bring the project limits down, ask them if we can keep that 800, they're still only gonna give you 50% of the project, so we might not get more money. Follow what I'm saying on that one?
Well, I think that, and I think that's really the gist of the mayor's question of, okay, if we scale back the project, are we gonna lose grant money? If there's the potential that we keep grant money, and we don't lose any of the grant money, well then, we're coming out ahead. And we're not getting as much
Not
done.
getting
as
much
you
done- much
prefer.
done.
Yeah.
One thing to think
Yeah.
about though on the grant program, and this will be a request we'll put in. You got funded under the local road improvement S program, which was the supplementary. And through that program, the grant money can be up to 90%. You got 50, other communities got 70. The previous rounds, 2 years prior to that application process, there were a lot of projects that got 90%. So, for example, we had some town road projects that got 70%, but before the high inflation, the bids and everything came in lower, so the state let them, you could go up to no more than 90% of the cost. So even though the bids came in lower, their grant money stayed the same, so their percent match went down. So I'm thinking on this one, there might be a possibility that, you could get up to that.
If we reduce the cost, they'll let us keep the 860, and we'd have a 70% grant instead of a 50%.
Right, exactly.
You can't request an amendment to go up to the 90%.
No, they won't, your grant money's capped. So like Matt says, this would be the same situation I ran into on some town road projects. You would now go below that 50% amount, but you can go up to the 90,
So you keep the same
keep
amount
the
of
same
money,
grant amount,
but
even
you
though
just-
you went up 50, it might be 70,
we just reduce the
75.
size of the
something like that.
project.
You'll never lose the 866.
The number of those that can't get money.
And they will consider, again, you're in that S supplementary pro. If you're in the D program, that's capped at 50. But we applied for this project through the S, which is up to 90, and people got 50 to 70, and you can go up to 90. So I'm thinking there might be a possibility of lower project costs, still keeping the 867.
And the other clarification for everybody here too. These bids are good, the bids that we presently have are good for 60 days
60 days,
from the day we opened,
day you open,
which was
Last Thursday, the
the 18th.
18th. So they're good 60 days out from the 18th. Okay, so I want to make sure that that's on. The other thing, and this is legally the other question about, because the extra costs were sanitary sewer, those types of things. But my question is this, and this is maybe more of a philosophical thing. So we're a community who is in a situation where we received a grant, we did it based on on these numbers, and these numbers came in so high. The question is, are there other communities in the same situation that receive similar grants, that all of a sudden, they're gonna get big numbers in, and they can't afford it either?
Oh, yeah. Yep. A lot of communities are.
And smaller communities being priced out of these programs because they cap it at the $800,000, $1 million, whatever the deal is, and it comes down to the question, which leads to the next question is, how much would we have to raise our rates to cover the cost?
Well, yeah, and that's at this point, I don't have those numbers. I guess if there's an overriding, okay, let's cut to the chase here. Roughly the 3.3 million we need to borrow for this project, we're already over our limit. So, I mean, to cut to the chase, there's no way we can do this project.
No
this year.
legal way we could do this project.
No way. And with some of even the temporary borrowing that we have to do with the pool, there's no
Still,
way we
doesn't
can do
affect
it.
on-
Yeah.
doesn't affect
So then it's kind of retrenching for future years, as Russ said. We've got some time yet to use this grant. There's some questions out there. And then back to the mayor's question. Okay, if we're looking at, because here's the other side of up against that debt limit. We do have the ability to, if we go borrow via revenue bonds versus, and the difference is, so for the Third Avenue Laneville project, we did general obligation debt, and all just general obligation debt for everything, even though we had some utilities. It's the easier way to go. You get better rates because it's the full faith and credit of the city to pay back that debt. So obviously, the folks that are buying those bonds are, hey, you know, they've got the ability to do it, and that's a good risk. Part of the Seventh Avenue project, right about the time I was getting here, you borrowed revenue bonds, which is basically just against the utilities, water and sewer. We had a water rate increase and just cover some of that. And this is getting into what the mayor was just talking about, so it's a little roundabout way. But, so we could, you know, again, at the next shot looking at this, we could go back and do revenue bond, which gets us out from under, because there's no limits on that. That doesn't count against your general obligation debt limit. The problem with revenue bonds is,
We know
A, the rates are always higher. So for example, I went back and looked in 2018, the rates we got for those revenue bonds was 840,000, was 4%. 4% back in 2018, where our general obligation debt back then was 1.25%, 1.5%. So, you know, almost double, triple the cost there. But then it's also gets paid back exclusively through the ratepayers. And so then we're back to what would we have to raise our water, sewer, stormwater rates to make those payments back, and again, would the ratepayers put up with that? And so those are the type of things that now that we have to retrench here a bit, that we're gonna have to look at in some future meetings.
Although the only thing about it is if they said that the water came in, part of it came in
Yeah,
reasonable.
water wasn't
Because
bad.
again, we don't have control of
Yeah.
that, we have to have that approved through the state. The other ones we could just do.
Exactly, yeah.
But again,
But
what
yeah.
can the payer stand? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
all of a sudden, if you're gonna sit there saying, we're gonna triple your bill each month to try to pay for this, and then that just becomes a little bit tough to stomach for the taxpayers here.
What did we have budgeted for this project?
Well, the whole project was roughly about two and a half, Matt?
2.5.
Like
Yeah, 2.5.
city money.
Well, okay, so the whole project, 2.5, 867 for the grant, so city money, about $1.6 million.
So my question is, what does this do to all, I mean, we have all of our projects lined up. Like, what does that do to, if we bump this one back, then that's, you know, it kind of
Kicks the
becomes a
can down the
domino,
road.
like.
Just kicks it down the road.
Everything gets
Well,
kicked down the road.
Is there anything we could bump? I mean, is it way too late, I'm assuming, right, to do some other projects this year quick that were further down the road with that same amount we had planned on spending, or no?
Probably not, I mean, this is.
Well, the
I
answer to
mean,
that question
it's-
is, yes, it's too late, because you
Yeah.
gotta do all the engineering, you gotta put it
Right.
all, I mean, it's not too late, but it takes a couple months to do engineering, another month or two to
And
go
nobody's
over
gonna bid on it.
bid, and
Yeah.
by then, everyone's
already
full
got
of
their bids.
projects, and you're getting higher
I'm
bids
assuming
too.
this will be a discussion on the next agenda.
As far as going
As
forward?
far as making them.
Oh, yeah,
we're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
have
This
to,
is
you
tonight's
know,
just a
except
report,
for executive,
ask questions, I mean, yeah. As far as,
We got 60
get it in
days.
front of you folks to mull it all over here, and then as far as the discussion, you know.
Well, and I
So
guess
we were
it's-
planning on 1.5,
Yeah.
and this, we would have to put in 3.3, did you say?
Well, so, okay.
Or is that the
So-
total
So
project?
even back to the original project, we still, because remember, and this is a little bit different than the block grants that we're used to, where we make a payment, we'd apply for a block grant reimbursement. This, we have to pay all up front before we get that 867 back. So again, we have to borrow, so between that and what we were gonna be really tight on those, but with $1 million essentially over, there's just no way. Not with the pool project.
So
I'm
you-
definitely
you-
pushing it back, that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, what we have to, the question is where do we go from
Yeah.
there? That's,
Yeah.
anyway.
Even with the grant, we
So-
initially gotta borrow the 3.3, the grant pays some of it back, but the borrowing the 3.3, they won't
Yeah.
even allow us to do that.
Right.
And that's the only problem with this LRIP. We like it as the best grant program out because it's very simplified, you don't have a lot of paperwork and red tape. But that's the one drawback as compared to those other federal programs. You know, you get paid back monthly or quarterly. Where on this LRIP program, you don't get your grant money till the end of the project and the contractor's been paid and we have all those receipts and so forth, and then we electronically submit it and you get your check within 2 weeks electronically from the DOT, but it's at the end. Other programs, you get things monthly or quarterly, both for design and construction. That's the one negative thing about the LRIP program.
So to kinda back to answer your question, these bids are 3,300,000. If you take the grant out of there, we'd be at 2,440,000 of money that we would spend when we were only talking about spending 1.6.
Russ, a couple of questions. The grant is good for up to 2027. What's to say if we push this back a year and we rebid it next year, it doesn't come in at 3.8 or higher for the low bid with inflation? So that just kind of pushes, things keep, where things are going, things keep going up.
That's why I think, you need to reduce the size of the project to keep it into an affordable level.
That leads my other question. You talked about shortening the project up. What is the conditions of the sanitary sewers at that old?
That's the worst sanitary sewer we have in the city, is those
Yeah,
4
that's the
blocks.
other-
That's
Yeah, so-
95% of the flow of the city runs through there, and it's in some of the worst condition
That's
in
why I
the
would
city.
prefer that being done.
So,
Well, that's kind of what I was
during
thinking.
this project.
I mean, at the end of the day, you kind of, what we would have to do, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done here that we're not gonna solve tonight, so at the end of the day, me and Russ and even Scott need to go back to a drawing board and try to come up with a plan, like, we've only had essentially
Less than-
3-4 days to digest this. Last Thursday and last Friday, we were, our blood pressure was, by Sunday, I think my blood pressure was back to normal, so I've really digested it for about 2 days now so we really gotta go back to the drawing board and kinda come up with a plan. If we reduce the size of this project, where do we reduce it? We have to probably sit down and look at what our biggest needs are, right? Is underground utilities number one? Then you gotta start at the south end. If you think curb and gutter and sidewalk is number one, well, then we gotta stay to the north end. So we really gotta kind of rank what we have as priorities and what we wanna see fixed the most, and then shrink this project down, see if we can get it back into that 2.5, then go back to the DOT and see what the DOT can do for us as far as grant money. So a lot of work kind of moving forward that we need to digest, potentially have a few public works committee meetings, and kind of go from there, would be my recommendation.
If we shorten it at all, it has to go to rebid.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can't do
Yeah.
nothing, currently right now, if you want this project, it's done entirety at this price. We can't shorten the project without rebidding this project. So it's yes or no at this number, which I think it's safe to say we can all sit around here and say no to that, right?
Yeah.
So then we're going back
Well,
to the
then,
ground.
even if you get a bid out, I mean, they're already gonna have their projects run the same, so basically
Yeah.
it's not possible to have it done.
You're into a worse
The way it looks to me.
competition situation, rebidding it yet this year. And the low bidder said, well, if you reduce the project, we'd be happy to do it, but the issue is, you have to award it at the low bid price and then change order out that overage, and would not recommend doing that, because that's not fair to the other bidders.
And then you have to go back and give those other
yourself
bidders a
trouble
chance
trying
to
do
change
that.
order their way out of it too,
Yeah.
so.
It's too much of a, you can change order small amounts, but that's way too big of a change order to do.
So could you, like next year, could you rebid it with options? Kinda like we did with the
could bid
pool
it-
as far
bid
as
it
like,
with phases and options and see how it comes in. That'll give us some time
It's
to
essentially part of going back to
hopefully
the
maybe
drawing
find
board.
some water and sewer grant money. That would be key to do the entire project. Like we said, in
The
terms
thing,
of
one of the reasons why we rated bad for some of that money is because a lot of that money's been earmarked, it has to be lead related, right?
Yeah, lead related,
lot of it's
fire
water.
pressure related, we obviously had the condition, the sanitary sewer and so forth, but there are so many other items that's in that application.
Water quality is.
Yeah, you get
ranks
higher
high.
scoring.
New piping is not considered water quality issues
Right.
unless it's lead. That's more considered more of a maintenance type issue, so,
Yeah, the plus side is, we have great water.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's,
yeah.
so it's nothing, that's nothing to be ashamed of, obviously, it's not gonna get us grant money.
It seems like you gotta work south, from the south this way now.
That's my concern, is if we shorten it up and don't do the south end, we get the rest of the project done, and if everything was happening on this end,
Yeah.
then we have a failure down there, then we're gonna be doing it anyways, and then it's gonna be even more expensive.
And that's where we struggled, a typical project, if it comes in high, it's real easy to take out a section. But this one is probably the most difficult one to determine, we said, wow. You can't take out the middle, in front of behind all the businesses. That's where a bulk of your LRIP grant is in the storm sewer, the sidewalk and so forth in the business area. As we get south, we're not doing as much sidewalk or anything in that area. And then you don't wanna do everything and then take out the small piece in front of Memorial Park. You've got this new street and everything, and then, you have the intersection and maybe have more Memorial Park, and people say, well, you did this whole beautiful street, but in front of the park, you didn't do anything. And that's not a real big cost savings, the block between First and Second. There's no sanitary there, there's some water main, very limited storm sewer, so that's not a big high cost item, so. Yeah, we really struggled with, where do you reduce the project?
So
It's not an easy one.
No, if you were to look at starting south and working this way, how far would the money you allocated get you?
We'll have to go back to the drawing.
Yeah, those aren't
questions.
Yeah, a lot of
We're
details
gonna
there.
be solved here tonight.
Those aren't questions I can answer today.
Yeah.
Not gonna get you to second,
Yeah.
might get you to third.
If we do push it back a year or even two, are the soil borings and all the other stuff we did, would that still be,
Oh, yeah, that's all.
we wouldn't have to redo that, so
Nope.
that would,
Yeah.
cause we're
Plans
paying
are
for
all-
that now,
The
that
plans
would
are all
lower the
good.
cost then.
The only cost we would incur by going back out to a rebid is if you shrunk the project. We would have a little bit of time redoing.
To the redesign.
to
Yeah, we just
redesign.
have to take
Yeah,
those
we just have to
plan
take some
sheets
plan
and those
sheets
details
out, take some
out
of
of
the
the
detail
spec.
out of the bid and out of the
Yeah.
spec. We just have a little time, T&M doing that.
Yeah.
But all the design that we've done over the last, 3 to 6 months is good. If we wanna do the project next year, you wanna do the project in 10 years, right? You just gotta go in there and adjust some numbers, so what we've done is not lost.
It's not like the pool project.
Yeah. Yeah. How long is sole
soil borings report, because that will change, right?
Yeah,
So-
they're good.
Yeah, the soil won't
Forever.
change unless you
Yeah.
physically change the soil,
Right.
right? Like, we're just boring down in the ground 20 feet and seeing what kind of rock we have 20 feet down, so that's not gonna change. Water table might change, obviously, you know, but other than that, that'd be about all that would change.
Okay. Council have any other questions? As we said, we'll be having this on a future agenda, and we'll continue to work our way through it. In the meantime, if something comes to mind after this discussion, call Matt, call Scott, call Russ, and we'll try to get the answers for you.
And you're gonna continue to look for other funding?
Yes, yep.
We can try, but it's very limited.
Yeah.
Everyone's famous words is, go get more grants, 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 grants. Grants are not as easy to come by for some of the stuff as everyone thinks they
And
are.
the low interest loan doesn't help you.
Yeah.
You need grant money, that portion of it. And those programs, unfortunately, are heavily weighted on the percentage of low interest loan and a small amount of grants.
We only roughly have about 5 options. We've exhausted 3 of them. So that leaves 2 left, CDBG, which CDBG doesn't have business type grants. They're more residential, low to moderate income. So we're kind of out of luck with them. And then you're back to the USARD, which is a loan, not a grant. So we've pretty much exhausted all of what we know to exhaust. Not that we won't take another look at them if something, rules and parameters have changed. But
Yeah,
From
they change them
from
every year,
2022
the
till
guidelines,
now,
so.
we looked at every one of those options.
Okay? 6th Avenue East project.
Just a quick update there, we continue to work on plans, specs, and bidding documents. Again, it's proposed to advertise that project February 22nd, 29th, and bid opening on March 7th. So Matt can talk a little bit, he had a meeting with the school and Public Works Committee on some concept plans that we put together with questions on sidewalk and pedestrian access and things like that.
So we had a Public Works Committee meeting last week to go over some concepts. This is the concept that we essentially walked over the most. We have some issues that we need to correct on this project on the school side. Their driveways are extremely steep. The middle driveway, people bottom out, cars bottom out coming in and out of that driveway. So we need to correct that driveway. We also want to correct the handicap or the pedestrian crossings at the school intersection. Currently, right now, they cross right here where you kind of see the mouse going. That's really not an option because of the steep slope on the school side of the street. We cannot achieve the handicap crosswalk slopes required by law. So essentially what we're gonna do is we're gonna bump the curb out in front of the school to widen that out and raise it up and help the slopes going in and out of the driveway. We bring a bump out here on Montgomery Street and 6th, and then comes around the intersection of Montgomery. That gives us enough slope down here in this corner to make sure that we have legal handicap access, and that gives us enough slope right in here to make sure that we have legal handicap access up into the sidewalk here. This project was meant to do spot repairs on sidewalks. So what you see in the blue on the school side, we are not touching. We are essentially just doing the gray areas that you see in and around the driveways. What I'll call the south side of the street, there is sidewalk all the way up and down that side of the street. All of that sidewalk is shot. So we talked at Public Works, we did meet with the school. Essentially, hardly anybody uses those chunks of sidewalk. Just a few people that live there maybe to walk around the block. So it's financially beneficial for all of us, and our recommendation and proposal is to remove no sidewalk from Prospect to Montgomery in between those blocks. The people can cross right here, go down the school side and cross back. Same thing moving between Montgomery and Washington Street, eliminating all of that sidewalk there, because there's sidewalk coming down Montgomery on this side. They'll come up Montgomery, they'll cross Montgomery, they'll cross 6 and right into the school. And then that allows us up here in Washington Street, this crosswalk here is not necessarily legal. There is no sidewalk on this side of the street, so we will essentially get rid of this handicap and this crosswalk here, and the people on Washington Street will just still come up and cross here as normal. Other than that, as you see the blue in front of the school, that sidewalk will stay. This gray area is kind of their bus loading zone and what we consider our furnishing zone between the handicap sidewalk and the curb. That we will be replacing through there. So in a nutshell, the curb width from Montgomery to Washington will stay the same as it is right now. It'll just, by the kind of the fire hydrant middle of Washington, will start extending out. Then it'll go through the driveways, and then it'll merge back into Prospect Street. We still have a full, so we don't really lose anything on the school side. The parking would be the only thing you lose, but there's really no parking in between these driveways anyway. So we bump that street out, saves us a little bit in street costs and street maintenance. We're able to raise the elevation up to make those driveways better. This will just be about a 14-foot drive lane right here, and then the other side of the street will remain drive lane and parking on that side of the street. So this is the concept that we are working on design currently.
As recommended by Public Works.
As recommended by the Public Works Committee.
So you're taking the sidewalk completely out on the south end of the south side of that project?
Correct.
So it'll just be more green space, or
It'll
you're
just
gonna?
be green space.
Mayor's got a lilac bush if you want it.
Yeah, that lilac bush, I said they could take that.
Yeah, my dog loves that
The bump outs here too, like I said, this one has to be here for elevation purposes. This one's here is more for safety, to get the children a little bit, and all pedestrians, I don't want to just say children, to get everybody out kind of closer to the drive lane before they step out onto the street. And then Public Works thought that potentially by doing that down the road, if we ever had crossing guard issues, that's just less of a street surface people have to cross if there wasn't crossing guards to ever have to be there in the future.
And prior to meeting with Public Works, we also met with Greg Overspike and explained that, and he's on board.
And
Do they need a crossing guard there? Because like, I know like in the morning, they block the traffic there anyway, so the only vehicles that come down there in the morning anyway are buses. So,
And they block it up on Washington, and they actually block it where the new crosswalk would be, they block it on the other side, which when the buses are there, those kids are coming out directly into traffic. There shouldn't be cars going through there because it's blocked.
Right.
I don't know if they will end up moving, they probably won't move their crosswalk guard down there, because then people on Montgomery could make a right
Could
turn
hurt, yeah.
without the crossing guard there.
Yeah,
So
they just
it's gonna take some getting used
but
to
they
for
could
the
just
kids.
run some cones out there or something, would be cheaper than having a well, of course, maybe I think it's just a staff that they have do it, but.
It is, yeah, they just have a staff that kids can get out of class a couple minutes early, and they finish up their day doing crosswalk there.
So are we needing a vote on this? or
No,
not?
it's just an
no
update.
discussion,
So
right?
unless you have any
Just one.
questions,
So-
comments, or concerns, is all, this was just to kind of let everyone around the table know what we're planning for up there. Again, hopefully have design done here, by the middle of February, then out to bid, and bid opening the first week of March, so. And then we'll see what these bids are, and we'll decide if we want to do this project, or what we want to do with this project, so. But we've already started the design, and the design doesn't go bad, so there's no point in, at minimum, do the design work.
Okay, Any other questions on 6 Mile Island? Blues on the Chippewa.
Yes, we were contacted by Blues on the Chippewa with the Madison Street project presumptuously underway. They reached out to us about potentially moving Blues down to the river. They've kind of always wanted to be down on the river, so they kind of sketched up a little plan for us. Again, tonight, this is just me kind of showing you the plan. We're not looking for approvals, we're not looking for much. Other than that, right now, your approvals for road closures and things like that would come later. We did kind of chat about it at Public Works. We are not seeing too many issues with this. Again, there's just some, maybe some excess stuff that we'll have to talk about later on when it comes to road closures. Less road closures for us. Ultimately, I think it can work out pretty well. We just have to close the boat landing for their staging area. They'd have a main stage right here. Their side stage would be back here. Their bar would be in our parking stall here. And they want to line food trucks kind of up, I'd say right in front of my shop back there. So none of this stuff, where this stuff sits here right now is set in stone. It's just was kind of a mock-up to give us something to look at the Public Works Committee. We will probably move these porta potties out of there, get them away from the Veterans Memorial, but this blue line back here is all their craft vendors that they've had that come and sell stuff. So I think there's a lot of pros to being down here. It's probably the same, footprint might even be a little bit bigger as far as chairs and things like that than what they have over at the park. So.
All the food trucks have their own generators, right? Like they don't need power.
No, you can see right behind the food truck line there, it says generator right there.
Oh, so
they rent generators anyway. They rent like 2 from Fabic Power. Over here, I think to move down here, they'll just have to rent a 3rd one. So, other than that, they'll just stash a generator kind of behind them and they'll run their power to the generator.
And the one thing that I had said about this, major issues, I just said with the Veterans Memorial over there, need to make sure, I know they were just talking about putting support, no, I stay away from that area. People want to go sit in their chairs there, that's fine. But as far as putting anything in or around the memorial, I don't think we should do. But again, if people want to go sit there with their chairs, that's fine. But that's the only thing that I had a concern or that we talked about. Otherwise, it would seem, Chief, do you have any reaction to this?
Safety with the river being there is my biggest thing. I kind of like seeing that there's at least craft vendors there, so you're going to have tables and tents.
Sure, that's the one thing that they
keeping
were.
people away. But just the safety of having a festival right along the river is always a concern. So, but I think it's a pretty cool location as far as like just advertising our river out here. I think is going to be phenomenal. But as far as just safety, but we'll just keep an eye on that. So.
We kind of discussed.
We discussed that.
Yeah, that was
pretty shallow. Because I even brought up, do we need to have them put a fence up there? But
You put a
I
fence
think
there,
it's a
that
pretty
looks-
good stumble down, and then probably,
Being
unless
aware.
the water's high. But if the water's kind of where it has been the last couple of summers, I think it'll be kind of out, and
I don't
not
think
real deep. So
The patrons aren't gonna be able to go to the west side of the main stage, basically, because everything in the blue is gonna be bands changing stage areas, so all people should be to the northeast of the stage.
And that's all rock, isn't it? It's all riprap?
Yeah, it's all riprap. The bank is all
Yeah.
riprap.
One thing that we get a lot of complaints during Blues Weekend from local voters that are mad because of the parking situation, because of the landing. So, this needs to be understood that, council has approved this
Yeah.
whole landing closure.
We
And
talked
they need to
about
We
understand.
discussed
that.
I thought we
the
told
vote
them it was
issue.
the chief of police that.
That was a chief problem.
The chief went rogue on us, and he just decided to close it.
We talked about it at.
That was
Public
my
Works,
biggest
yeah,
concern of like making sure
Yeah.
there weren't like
Yeah.
any fishing tournaments, that there weren't any state requirements that we couldn't do that. And we kind of discussed like, we're hoping that some of the voters will want to be out there
watching the music or listening to the music too, but they're just gonna have to use an alternate
You have to
landing,
use an
unfortunately.
alternate landing, so as long as everyone around this table is fine with shutting that, there's no rule that says we can't shut it down, it's our boat landing, we control what happens there. So as long as everyone around this table is fine with shutting that boat landing down, they're just gonna kinda have to deal with it for 4 days.
And one thing, I mean, it's Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday. By Sunday,
They have this, well, the stage and setup will probably start on, they either start on Monday or Tuesday night for that.
but that still doesn't affect the staging area.
Yeah,
We could keep the boat landing open until,
Stage is gonna actually be in the grass, this is just like where they put their campers for.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, can we stipulate that
It'd be a-
that
it'd be a
remains
staging
open
area
except
where
for
they
the
put
actual
RVs
days of the
and stuff
event,
that They
right?
don't show up until.
Yeah, we would make sure that there would still be access as far as, except for the actual event, something like that.
If the project in Madison doesn't happen, can it be up here still, or they want it down there?
They actually, the way they talk.
They've been talking for years about moving
Been
it
talking
down.
for years about moving it down there, they just figured now would be the best time to broach the subject, so I think.
I mean, we
they
could always
wanna-
have it here.
I think they wanna, their intent would be to keep it down here if it worked out, so.
I think this is awesome, but that's,
Yeah.
being a kid who grew up in La Crosse and used to Riverfest every, that's down on the river, I think this is fantastic for our community.
So just an update that, this is kind of the way they're proceeding and, they're gonna probably start booking some of their stages and things like that, advertisement, so. Any questions, that's all I got.
Any other questions? Not, let's pay the bills. Next regular meeting's on Valentine's Day. We'll make it a quick meeting, because I'm assuming you're all taking significant others out for a big dinner or something, even on a Wednesday.
Is there any discussion to be had about the garbage company change at all? Any impacts at all?
Not that we've heard, right?
Glad that we're not involved in that business. Or contracted with anyone?
The letter says business as usual. We'll see how it transpires.
The only impact for us is, price is if they went up, that'd be the only impact.
Is there still a closed session on next?
Yep.
That's the plan, yeah.
We'll do close
That's
session.
that short meeting, so.
I was gonna wonder the same thing.
I don't know about that.
Before you make your Valentine's Day plans.
Yeah.
At least I got somebody,
Make it as
I
short
got
as you
somebody to
want.
blame.
I was gonna say.
Just
Roses.
Roses and candy.
He said they're going. The mayor set that damn agenda. Chief, are we doing okay with equipment for everything?
Yep.
Good. Any other committee meetings that you're seeing coming up?
We're looking at a public safety meeting. Chief King has some items, ambulance has some items, we have some items. I think we'll probably, just off the top of my head here, we should probably, if we could maybe even do that on the Wednesday for the 28th. Does that work, Stan? Is that-
Yeah. That would actually work better than the 14th.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, so, just, yeah. We'll talk about that obviously at the next meeting as well. Yep.
Oh, yeah, okay.
With the
Yeah,
memo.
yeah,
What it says.
yep, got it. I was wondering if that was it.
It's the windshield about from the 2012 GMC.
My windshield got busted
Yeah.
off.
It's something,
I was
that's
thinking
right,
our
yeah.
vehicles are
Yep.
newer than
Mhm.
Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, no.
I thought.
Not one
maybe
of our
somebody-
temporary ones.
Thought maybe somebody broke something,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
somebody
That,
else.
is that the whole cost of it? That's less than 1,000. I figured it, didn't think about trade.
No? Oh, that's fine.
Snow blower all up and running.
Well, I haven't had to run it.
But I mean, it's,
Yeah, it's,
It'll be great for next year.
we used it on that three, we used it on that
Oh,
three.
Peter just jinxes. I know the forecast says 50 degrees someday next week.
You golf memberships earlier.
Yeah, we're talking golf
dumped
membership.
on in April.
You do realize
They
that
spent a good portion of
the
day and a
last
half.
council meeting, the chief used the Q word for December? He's, the fire chief,
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, yes.
He
yes,
does
yes,
that.
yes,
Right.
yes, yes, yes.
and look what happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve
I
the
think you're
vouchers?
100% correct.
Make a motion to approve the vouchers?
Second.
We have a motion second to approve the vouchers. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Mankey.
Yes.
Councilmember Hayden.
Yes.
Councilmember Hooker.
Yes.
Councilmember Raisler.
Yes.
Councilmember Weisenbeck.
Yes.
Councilmember Weisapple.
Yes.
All six in favor.
Motion's agreed to. Any other business to come before the council? If not, if someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.